I am at the Amtrak train station. Seems I've been here before. And I'm waiting this time for a bus going north that will be here in a couple of minutes. I am at Union Station in Portland, where I've been many times before, and it's a nice station. I'd like to go in, but I just got off that bus and I'm kind of hungry. So instead I'm going somewhere in this direction. These are the North Park blocks in the Pearl District, and they are a nice shady place to rest, but right now I have to keep walking because I am hungry. So I'm right on 10th and Burnside. Right there is Powell's Books, Doc Martens. We have a street drummer, and we have a big old thing of construction. So this is about the center of one version of Portland. Pizza over there. So I'd like to say more about downtown Portland, but right now I'm just passing through. Also, there's lots of people in my shots. Oh God, kind of sensory overload. A lot of shopping, a lot of construction, a lot of people. The Buffalo Exchange, of course. Patagonia over there. So a lot of retail and shopping. This is like the shopping and entertainment district of downtown Portland. What a lot of people might see, and it's not the whole story of Portland, but yeah, it's important. And I wish I could say something more clever about that. The Crystal Hotel and Crystal Ballroom, I remember in 1994 when that was being built. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about are me reminiscing. And of course, Spartacus, which back in the 90s, that was really naughty. Now we all have the internet. Not so shocking. And also Whole Foods. So kind of an upscale place combined with sometimes kind of a grungy place. This is also new. When I was a teenager, there was one grocery store in downtown Portland, the Safeway of the Damned. And then things became upscale. So all of this, the Pearl District, 25 years ago, this was just breweries and warehouses. And it being fancy is still, to me, new. But I guess it's like 20 years now, over 20 years that we've been fancy here. And I'm just going to keep on walking. A lot more I'd like to see, but that'll be good for now. That is the Crystal Hotel. This over here is the Crystal Ballroom, part of a complex. This is Everyday Music, new and used music store, opened in 1995. To me, this is still kind of new Portland, but now this is almost 30 years old. And I remember in 1995 when this area still smelled like a brewery full of warehouses. Felt kind of grungy coming down here and buying used cassette tapes for $4.20 each. Learned a lot about music that way. Okay, and now I'm going to cross 405. This bridge here is the Ned Flanders Crossing, named after Ned Flanders from The Simpsons, who was himself named after Northwest Flanders Street in Portland. Several of the Simpsons characters were named after streets in Portland. And this is a new bridge. I believe it opened in June. And I'm showing it because it's a nifty new bridge, and I always like to look at a bridge. I think the Simpsons think it's funny, of course. But also, one of the points of this bridge is this is a pedestrian and bicycle bridge, and it's kind of a sign of how it's right over this freeway, the 405 freeway, and it's kind of here because it's, the city is saying this neighborhood is not just for freeways, this is for people too, so they built this bridge. I guess it's a little bit older because 2021, but still pretty new. After I crossed 405 to the west, I'm no longer in downtown Portland, I'm in Northwest Portland. And on the other side of Burnside to the south is Goose Hollow. So these neighborhoods are distinct from, downtown Portland, but a lot of times they're kind of put together because we're still in kind of a high volume area, still a lot of arts and culture, dining and stuff. So, from a large picture, this is still more or less downtown Portland. Feel free to have a flame war in the comments about that. So this neighborhood is characterized by mostly medium-sized apartment buildings. We have some what were presumably private homes, now probably converted into offices. So it's not super dense, and these buildings are older, but still more dense than an average neighborhood, I would say. This here is a newer development. This is the new Civic Apartments. There was an old Civic apartment, kind of a lower income apartment building. I lived there twice, in 1997 and 1999. And at the time, you could walk into an apartment building in an area like this, close to downtown Portland, with a check in your pocket and get an studio apartment for $400 a month. Obviously, you can't do that anymore. And this is West Burnside, outside of downtown, or still in, Goose Hollow, Northwest. Still pretty dense, but like you can see, we're dealing with smaller buildings here. Still a lot of dining, arts, entertainment, bars, that type of thing. And a Fred Meyer. There's always a Fred Meyer somewhere. This was here when I was in my teen years. A lot less fancy now, fancy then. They redecorated it. It's kind of upscale, but not so upscale I can't get some donuts. And that is Providence Park. That's a stadium for football, baseball, but most notably it is our Major League Soccer team stadium, and it's kind of one of the anchors of the neighborhood. So this street I'm on, West Burnside right now, is the street that divides Portland into north and south, where the addresses are divided. It's also a street that goes all the way from Gresham all the way out to Beaverton, and when it hits these trees right here, it kind of goes uphill, and that's kind of the end of this downtown or downtownish area into a more residential area, and a very rich residential area, which you can see maybe already that this is kind of fancy. And up there is Washington Park. And that's going to be my next stop because I need some shade. There's Zupon, that's a high-end retailer. There's Kitchen Caboodle, high-end kitchen supply store. And the Zupons has been there forever. A lot of this other stuff has been built in the past 20 years. And here we have Northwest 23rd, which over 20 years ago, the wits were already calling Northwest Trendy Third. Isn't that clever? You can see there how sudden and steep the escarpment is that separates this region from the region on the hill. Also, the people who live in those apartment buildings, I believe they are apartment buildings, I imagine they're paying a lot of rent to live there. Road, and right here is the entrance to the park, and we just stepped 20 feet off the road and things change very dramatically now that we are in Washington Park, the entrance to Washington Park. Still only a few hundred feet from the entrance and things have changed dramatically. I mean, it doesn't look like I'm in a wilderness trail, but if I said I was 20 miles from downtown Portland, that wouldn't seem unlikely. So it's shaded, pleasant, a little bit cooler, but it's still a hot day, and this is uphill. And I remember being 18 years old and being here, telling myself stories about Yudhishthira and Itoogami. So we've reached the top of that trail. We still have more trails to go. There is a very beautiful and musical fountain when it is working, which it is not right now. Don't know how permanent or temporary that is. Over here we have this fence. This fence blocks off a reservoir that at one point was one of Portland's backup water supplies. Portland gets most of its water supply from snow melt in the Cascades, and then sometimes it's stored in additional reservoirs around the city. So I don't know if it's being temporarily repaired or if it's out. A lot of things I don't know today. We're going to continue up that way. Well, this answers. This is a earthquake ready reservoir, so they did seismic improvements. But the next phase of work won't begin until late 2023, so whatever's going on down there, it's like a long-term project. This is the Rose Garden, the Portland Rose Garden. It's part of Washington Park. Washington Park has many smaller gardens inside of it, including this one and the Japanese garden. And this is a very beautiful place. It's hard to really gild the rose by trying to describe how nice it is to be here. As mentioned, these are the way of the Japanese garden. I have never actually been to the Japanese gardens before, and I've lived in Portland for a long time, and I used to go here all the time. I never actually made it there. What I'm going to try to do is find the shuttle bus. In the distance is Council Crest, the highest point in Portland. I believe that's what that radio tower is. And right here we have a variety of features. This is the other end of Washington Park. And this includes the World Forestry Center, Hoyt Arboretum, and over in that direction, the Oregon Zoo. And so these are other features that are embedded within Washington Park. Interesting point, when I was 18 and I came here, the world was still two-dimensional. There wasn't Google Maps and there wasn't things you could look up. And even though I'd spent years kind of wandering around Portland, I didn't even know the rose gardens were there. I didn't know where they were. I just heard about them. And I just happened to run into two friends waiting for a bus, and they're like, we're going to the rose gardens. And then from there, I explored up here. Of course, with the zoo, I'd been there as a child. Also, the old OMSI was right over there. So kind of makes me sentimental when I'm here, you know, the thrill of discovery in the days before the internet. And of course, at that point, there was not a Amtrak Station here. This was dug in 1999. North America's deepest transit station. And I would like to spend more time in Washington Park, but I am going to get on an elevator and go back to Portland. So this is the train station. I think it's like 200 feet below the surface. So all is very cool. You can have the katabatic winds coming through. And if you had the time and interest in geology, they actually have a sample core of the layers of sediment between the surface and here. Digging this tunnel was a long process. There's the train coming in now. Pretty full train too. We're back downtown. I took the train downtown, got off at Pioneer Courthouse Square, and now I'm just kind of walking down Broadway. These are the South Park blocks, which are like the North Park blocks, only totally different, not contiguous and not even on the same street. This is up on 10th or something. That's down on 5th. And this is right next to the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. And there used to be Tiger's Heart, the Shakespeare Theater. I don't know if it still is, but there is a lot of arts and entertainment here. And, you know, I would kind of say this is another arts and entertainment district of downtown Portland, but really, everybody here is very artistic, including probably this crow. So to kind of reiterate a point, I made the original Portland downtown video in March. It was pretty short, and I made the point there that there's a lot of sensationalism about what Portland is like. And it's somewhat ironic that a lot of people who are against the mainstream media also will believe that Portland is like a terrible war zone based on sensationalized reports on, you know, local news. And all I would say is, you know, if you want to come down, you can come down and look and see what it's like. And I'm walking around acting conspicuous. I have an expensive video camera out. I'm wearing this very red shirt. Again, see how red that shirt is. So, you know, all the people who are making that, you know, saying that stuff about Portland, you know, feel free to come down, check out what's going on. You know, and this video doesn't show everything. There are some unpleasant things I've seen. But, you know, this is what I've shown today is a pretty good cross-section. And so I'd say, you know, come down and see for yourself. And I know that's a little bit too street for some people. So a continuation of the South Park blocks is kind of this grassy lawn that is part of Portland State University. Spent a lot of time here when I went to Portland State University, which the main buildings of Portland State University are like 5 buildings along here on our left side and then some on our right side. And then the university is already also expanded, so it has other buildings in downtown. And Portland State University is quite large, physically and in terms of the amount of students. So Portland State University is about the size of Oregon State University or University of Oregon in terms of numbers of students enrolled. But it has a different character. It's mostly commuting students, and it's also a lot of students who are non-traditional, outside of the normal college years, who are coming there after work. So it doesn't really have the university characteristic of a OSU, like in Corvallis where I live, because it's not, you know, there's not like a lot of mascots and activities. There's a fair amount of that stuff, but it has a different character. And it's also in the middle of a large city, so it doesn't, even though it's a large part of this city, it's not as prominent as University of Oregon or Oregon State University are. Right now it's also summertime, and not just normal summertime, it's like the end of August, so even the summer classes are not going on. Normally it would be a lot more crowded here. In a couple weeks, beginning of fall, there will be a lot of things going on, a lot of energy, music in the cafes at night, revolution in the air. And also I could go and get a drinking fountain. So anyway, I'm going to continue this way now that I've seen my old university and see what else is going on. So I'm waiting for a different type of train right now. This is the Portland Streetcar. And this is also something that I kind of think of as new, even though it's been here for almost 20 years. And as opposed to the MAX, which is regional, goes to all the suburbs, this makes a loop around downtown. And I've never really heavily used it because it doesn't go too far, and usually I can walk as far. But today, it's really helpful. So I'm going to jump on this and go for a while.
Southwest 5th and Market. Doors to the left. Proof of valid fare is required on Portland Streetcar.
Right now, streetcar tracks crossing the MAX tracks. There's our map. We got on here, going here. And now I'm going to take that back because after riding it, I can see it's quite efficient. In my 20s, when it first started, it just did a little loop around downtown for shoppers. But now it's actually a really good way to get to the South Waterfront. And another thing about streetcars and stuff like that is they can seem relatively disused. And then you count the people and you realize that on a normal bus, it would be packed. One more interesting point about the streetcar, when it opened it was part of TriMet, and apparently now it has changed and it's run by the Portland Bureau of Transportation. It's still cross-ticketed with TriMet fares, but that's an interesting jurisdictional point. A lot of times when you're dealing with city transit, you'll have a lot of different jurisdictions, and it's not always clear why. This is the Tilikum Crossing Bridge. The newest bridge over the Willamette opened in 2015, and this carries the Max Orange line. It carries the streetcars, it carries buses, pedestrians, and bicycles. This bridge does not carry private automobiles. And it's a beautiful bridge from an architectural standpoint. Interesting cable-stayed design. It also at nighttime has lights that change with the temperature and the speed of the water of the river. And right there, we can see a Max Orange line coming in. It'll turn into a yellow line as it goes through downtown. So I did want to show this. On another day, I would cross it, but I'm a little bit short of time and also still a little bit hot. And over there, we can see the funicular come in. This is the funicular that goes from the South Waterfront up to the OHSU campus, the Oregon Health Science campus. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of different things that go on rails and cables. And over there, we have some South Waterfront development. And to me, this is still kind of strange because up to 2005, I remember going across the Ross Island Bridge, that bridge there, and that just being empty lots full of like old broken down pallets or something. And now it's expensive there. And again, that's a point about Portland that I think is fair to make, because yes, there still is a lot of poverty in Portland. It is a problem. On the other hand, don't discount that people are still moving into Portland and stuff is still being built here. So there's a lot of different sides to the city, and hopefully we've seen some of them. So now I'm going to walk north on this path, which will really take me all the way back to where I am going to return home to the bus station. And the next bridge I'll be passing under is this, the Markham Bridge. There is Oregon Health Science University. Over here, see that radio tower? That was the one we were looking at when we were somewhere over here. So somewhere over on those hills is where the top of Washington Park is and where I started on the train from. And I'll be continuing this way. Also, there is OMSI and a submarine. And a lot of this stuff is Oregon tourism, Portland tourism 101, but I want to share it anyway. So here we have a kind of promenade, outdoor dining. Very nice in a shady but warm Friday afternoon. Too bad I didn't notice this when it was happening, but the bridge is up because over here we have a tugboat going through. And just now it was showing how the waterfront has a lot of amenities as far as being a dining area, hospitality area. You know, there's pleasure craft on the river, but Portland is still a port. That's actually not why it's called Portland. That just has to do with a coin toss. But there is still industry going on, and I don't know what this particular barge is carrying. It could be empty and going to a place where it's going to be refilled, but it is going under the drawbridge, which means there's a lot of cars that are stopped. Okay, so the bridge is down, cars are going back across it. I will link that video in so people can watch it if they want to. It's kind of long because I showed it in real time. On the other side of the river, we have some taller buildings. Some of those are new, and that's up to and including the Lloyd District. So that's kind of like the mini downtown, where downtown is on the west side of the river, and then over there we have like a little mini downtown. And we will not be going there today, but I did want to show that. So that's the Burnside Bridge, and Burnside Street is on it, strangely enough. And that right there, the river divides Portland into west and east, and Burnside divides Portland into north and south. So that's where the 4 quadrants of Portland come together. But there's actually 5, but they're not called quadrants, they're called quadrants. There's 5 quadrants. To be fair, you know, when I talk about Portland having problems, you do say things like this: a syringe and a drinking fountain. Don't drink from that drinking fountain. And so, yeah, I want to be clear, you know, even though I say a lot of it is exaggerated, there are things like that that, yeah, kind of make me a little bit off-put when I'm here. So right now, we're kind of at the point where the riverfront, the waterfront park is drawing to a close, and I want to find a way to cross this street and get over there. Don't know the exact best place to do that. This is the Steel Bridge, the second to last of downtown's drawbridges to the north. And it's a very unique bridge for some technical reason. On the bottom bridge, the top bridge carries cars, it carries the MAX, and the bottom bridge carries a train, including it carries Amtrak, and there's a train stopped on it right now. And from a MAX point of view, from a TriMet point of view, this was the bridge for the MAX when there was just the blue line from Portland to Gresham. And many years later, when it's become more popular, it now carries the north-south line and then the west-east lines to the airport, to Clackamas Town Center, to the Expo Center. And so it's kind of the choke point now for how many trains TriMet can run on the MAX. And it's a case of like when they were designing this in 1978, Portland was a much smaller town and they thought they just had one MAX line. And so now it's kind of a point of trouble when getting more MAX trains through, because there's a limit to the headway on the bridge. I am back at Union Station, where ironically I will not be going by train. I came in on an Amtrak throughway bus, but I'm leaving back to Corvallis on the Flix bus, which is in this direction. So today I looked at a lot of different parts of Portland, but really just a section. But I tried to cover, you know, a little bit of physical geography, natural geography, and then a lot of social and demographic stuff. And a lot of it honestly was covered by my memories and what I thought was important and how I've seen the city change. And there's a lot of different perspectives, and hopefully this is, even though this isn't everything, this was a fair perspective of different things to see in Portland. And hopefully I can see some more of it, but now it's time to go home.